So, The Sims, the cozy life simulation game where you can spend 3 hours designing a kitchen you'll never actually use, just got sold for $55 billion to Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund and Jared Kushner. Yes, that Jared Kushner. If you've been anywhere near the Sims community lately, you've probably seen the absolute drama meltdown. Creators leaving, players declaring moral bankruptcy, and everyone else just quietly wondering how the cozy, gay, chaos simulator ended up being owned by people who literally outlaw gay people. Welcome to Simsgate, the influencer exodus that started with a corporate merger and spiraled into a full-on values crisis. Now, this isn't just gamer drama, my friend. It's a case study in what happens when capitalism buys your comfort zone. Hi, I'm Andriana, and I overthink all things culture, community, and occasionally your favorite nostalgic thing that has an existential crisis attached to it. And today, that nostalgic thing is The Sims, so buckle up. So, this story isn't just about a sale. It's about identity ethics and why a $19.99 laundry day pack might have finally broken the internet's moral compass. Before Simsgate and all of these drama hashtags, there was just a press release, one that set off the largest gaming buyout in history. On September 29th, 2025, Electronic Arts, or EA, announced that it would be taken private in a $55 billion deal led by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, plus Silver Lake and Jared Kushner's Affinity partners. EA CEO Andrew Wilson keeps his job. Meanwhile, players lost it. To be fair, this isn't coming out of nowhere. Saudi's Public Investment Fund has reportedly been collecting gaming companies like their Pokemon cards for years, of course, allegedly. And it's all part of its Vision 2030 plan to rebrand the country through entertainment. So think of like soft power with like RGB lights. I don't know. After several rounds of layoffs and studio reshuffles, many developers were already uneasy about EA's future. Once the announcement hit, headlines ranged from historic deal to EA sells soul to oil money. Within days, creators within the EA creator network started resigning publicly. You could actually watch this community that was built on virtual family stories suddenly split like one of those awkward divorces where everyone's fighting over the mods. Meanwhile, business outlets framed it as a bold global move, and labor unions and human rights advocates framed it as a potential security issue. The Communication Workers of America even sent a letter to the US Treasury asking them to review the deal. That's how fast this went from gamer drama to actual government concern. And then by late October, Simsgate was in full swing. Creators were jumping ship or doubling down, hashtags were trending, and EA was quietly deleting love is love tweets faster than you can say optics. Allegedly, that was a joke. They would never do something like that. That was a joke. And while most coverage stopped at the headline, what made this so personal was what The Sims has always stood for: choice, creativity, and a bit of chaotic freedom. So why this game? Why did this sale hit The Sims like a meteor when other gaming mergers barely even made a ripple? Well, The Sims isn't just a game, it's actually like an identity sandbox. This girl's joining us for a moment. Tell her how nice she looks in her jammies. For over 20 years, The Sims has been a digital mirror where players could create the lives that they weren't free to live offline. Queer teens built families that they dreamed of. Women gamers found control in a world that constantly asks them to juggle it all. Black players modded in hair textures that the devs seem to have forgot existed. It's never just been dollhouses. It's been therapy with cheat codes and custom content the whole time. So, when players found out that their cozy queer chaos simulator was being sold to a sovereign wealth fund from a government that criminalizes queerness, well, that hits different. It wasn't, oh no, my favorite studio sold out. It was, wait, my safe place just got bought by people who would rather I didn't exist. That's not exaggeration. That is collective heartbreak. And it's not just about representation on screen, it's about the culture around the game. The Sims community is majority women, queer, and neurodivergent. It's collaborative, creative, and sometimes chaotic, but overwhelmingly kind. There's a reason why it's one of the least toxic corners of gaming. And the creators there build an entire channel around one game and are able to make a living that way. Just playing one single game. That blows my mind. When that corner then gets sold to a new landlord with questionable human rights records, people understandably panic. What you see here isn't just fandom outrage, it's culture shock. We're watching a group of people who have helped craft a space that has a culture of inclusivity realize how fragile that safety actually is once money enters the chat. That's the intersection of identity and capitalism, where even a life simulation game can become like this moral yardstick. So yes, Simsgate is drama, but it's also data. It tells us what happens when the worlds we build for self-expression get entangled with these real-world systems that we're trying to escape from. All right, let's talk about the question that cracked this whole thing open. When do you quit your job for your values? Because it's easy to say, follow your conscience until your conscience pays your bills. If you're a Sims content creator, your income might come from YouTube ads, sponsorships, the EA Creator Network, and maybe even pack reviews and like affiliate codes. So walking away isn't like quitting a hobby. It is saying goodbye to a chunk of your income and potentially to a portion of your audience that you've cultivated around it. But here's the nuance that many seem to be dramatically forgetting. Leaving The Sims doesn't mean you've lost your job. You still have your platform. Your subscribers did not sign a contract with EA. They follow you. So it's not total collapse. It's more of a pivot. And maybe that pivot reveals something about how we've let corporations trick us into thinking that our creativity belongs to them. So I like to think of this as like a little value decision ladder, okay? So, question 1. Does this ownership put marginalized players at risk or silence them? If your audience includes queer players, trans players, creators from other regions that are criminalized under these laws, then yeah, this question hits first. So, also women, journalists, I mean, look up the human rights violations. Level 2. Do I, as a creator, have to sanitize my content or my audience to stay? If you start second guessing your own titles or censoring yourself or doing less like pride related things in your builds, well, that's a red flag. When you can't fully be yourself in a space you helped build. And by the way, if you're an active part of the Sims ecosystem, you helped to build that shit, because they charge so much. We will get to the morals the ethics of like the way they price things later, but you helped build this. So anyways, you're already halfway gone, is my point on rung 2. So rung 2 is also a little tricky because sure, at first you may not notice that you need to censor yourself or change things. And then question 3, do I have enough leverage to leave? Be honest about numbers. Could you survive a pivot? Could you downsize or pause while you're exploring new projects? Leaving with strategy is still leaving with integrity. And of course, everyone's answer is gonna look different. Someone's brave choice could be someone else's financial nightmare. I just do think it is important to remember that we don't all have the same safety nets in place. And that's probably the last favorable thing I will say in regards to creators that stay. Okay. So the idea that you could somehow stay and be an influence from within, that one's tricky. Unless you're on the board or in the C-suite, you're not influencing policy, you're decorating the room they already built, and that's fine to admit. To me, the real question isn't, will leaving change EA, but it is, what does staying change in me? This isn't abstract. We're talking about a nation where trans women have been beaten to death, journalists who criticize the regime have been tortured, dismembered. I mean, when your revenue stream trickles up through that system, it's fair to ask, what does that do to your soul? No paycheck should come with that kind of spiritual fine print. Ugh. At some point, every creator has to choose between convenience and conscience. Leaving won't topple a $55 billion empire, but it does something subtler. It draws a line. Every brand expects your loyalty. Drawing that line might be the most radical thing you can do. Over the last few years, The Sims 4 has become one of the most inclusive games on the market. And yes, I know it was kind of slow going and like we can criticize it, but you can't deny that where it stands and that even what it's done over the course of its history was pretty inclusive compared to a lot of its contemporaries in those moments. Recently, they've introduced pronouns and gender customizations and even sexual orientations, which sometimes sexual orientations is a little frustrating because it's like, what do you mean you're not into me? What do you mean you're in my fictional world and you're not into me? So, of course, it wasn't perfect, but it was progress, more progress than most other games were making. So when that legacy gets handed to a group tied to a government that criminalizes queerness and even lists same-sex acts as potentially punishable by death, players understandably worry, not because they expect a sudden purge of pride flags, but because they know what corporate self-preservation looks like. I don't think anyone is expecting Maxis to suddenly just delete all of the pride items. That would be bad business. The fear is quieter. Subtle self-censorship, fewer pride collabs, fewer non-binary storylines, fewer queer creators featured in marketing, because it's easier to avoid conflict than to risk offending the people that are literally signing your checks. Because you also have to keep in mind the Jared Kushner of it all. That's yet another one with allegedly extremely conservative values and views. They're gonna own this game. It's insane. That's how representation dies. Not through patch notes, but through silence. And this isn't just a Sims problem. Saudi's public investment fund has quietly bought into esports, streaming, and even like film production. It's all part of like a global soft power campaign to launder their image. They're trying to like launder their image through culture. So it's not about erasing queerness directly, it's about owning enough of the narrative that you never have to see it, which sadly is a dream come true for some. For queer creators, that fear isn't theoretical. Their art and their livelihoods are tangled together. If the space that they built their identity in becomes unsafe or even just uncomfortable, they lose more than just a paycheck. They lose a home. And that's why the backlash isn't performative. It's legitimate grief. They're realizing that the game that once gave them a sense of safety will no longer be able to promise it once the sale goes through. And that's why a lot of people started questioning their role in the system altogether. Because beyond queerness, there's another conversation hiding in here and about labor, loyalty, and who's really profiting from your passions. A lot of Sims creators aren't just fans anymore. They're actually part of the marketing team. And before anyone clutches their plumb bob, yes, that includes the ones in the EA Creator Network. The network isn't just free early access codes. For many, it's income, referral links, sponsorship bonuses, ad revenue spikes from first look videos. It's influencer affiliate marketing, but like in Simlish. So when people say, I can't just walk away, what they usually mean is, I've mistaken comfort for captivity. You might lose access, income, and maybe even your sense of identity online, but you can walk away. You just might not like what freedom costs. It's not impossible, though. It's just inconvenient, and there is a difference. Next came a wave of creators insisting that they were staying to be a positive influence from within, which is adorable. But let's be honest, you're not going to influence the Saudi Arabian government, nor are you going to influence EA's board of directors. And the Sims dev team? It's crazy. The only thing you're influencing is your own sense of self-denial. That's not activism. That's brand maintenance. So what I think they're actually saying and meaning is, I have built my entire brand inside of this corporate ecosystem, and I can't risk starting over because I am either out of ideas or I'm out of integrity. You have put every egg, every brand deal, and every rent payment into one corporate basket. Of course, you're convincing yourself that that basket is somehow still ethical. Of course. Hey, little man. And then there's a third group, the ones who just said, I don't care. No moral gymnastics, no PR statements, just I like the game, I don't care who owns it. That isn't neutral. That's depraved. That's the kind of comfort that lets systems rot from the inside because we'd rather not feel inconvenienced. If your whole livelihood comes from a product that is now tied to a people who would criminalize half of your audience and your reaction is, I don't care, you're not just ignoring politics, you're ignoring people. There are creators who left for values, and then there are some who are staying out of fear. And then there are some who have just stopped caring. And I would imagine that one of those groups is actually sleeping well at night. So at this point, you've got to be wondering if EA's still getting bought, if billions are still changing hands, if capitalism just keeps capitalisming, then does any of this even matter? Does walking away do anything, or are we just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic expansion deck? In reality, a few dozen creators leaving the EA Creator Network will not stop a $55 billion deal. The board isn't like sweating over our boycott, but that doesn't make leaving pointless. It just means that the impact of it isn't vertical, it's more horizontal. It might not immediately climb up the corporate ladder, but it will ripple out sideways through communities, reshaping what is normal, what's acceptable, and what people start questioning next time. They're just gonna keep doing this. These companies are just gonna keep doing this. We have to start changing and holding them accountable sooner. Oh, but no, we can't walk away now. It's already too late. Okay. Anyways, every person who leaves sends a signal, not just to EA, but to each other. It says, hey, there's another way to be successful that does not require moral gymnastics. Movements rarely start with policy. They start with small acts of refusal that make other people braver. Sometimes peace of mind is the only ROI that matters. Even if nothing changes at EA, walking away changes you. It rebuilds your moral muscle. It reminds you that integrity doesn't require an audience. And if you stay, knowing what you know, you will have to live with that dissonance. The constant negotiation between what you believe and what you literally helped bankroll. That's the quiet erosion of self-respect. So no, leaving likely won't collapse the empire, but it might help keep you from becoming a part of it. And even if people do that, maybe the next empire never gets quite so big. Also, can we just take a moment to discuss how EA didn't suddenly become morally questionable because of this sale? The Sims has been nickeling and diming us since the day it learned what a microtransaction was. We've paid $9.99 for laundry, $14.99 for tiny houses, $19.99 to watch our Sims make cupcakes faster. To fully own every pack today, you'd have to spend like over $1,000. Plus, you're gonna need a therapist on retainer because that's insane. So if anyone is asking why EA would sell to a foreign fund with questionable ethics, it's like, my goddess, they sold you a $20 kit for curtains and you still clicked buy. Morality left the chat years ago. Predatory pricing is how this franchise was built, in my opinion. It's not just EA, it's gaming's business model in its final boss form. Buy the game, buy the patch, buy the fix for the patch, then buy the remaster. And we played along because The Sims has always sold us a fantasy of control. If we could just organize the chaos of our tiny digital lives, then maybe we'd feel a little less chaotic in our real ones. So when a company built on that illusion sells to the highest bidder, it just feels poetic because EA was already training us to accept exploitation one stuff pack at a time. The Saudi fund didn't corrupt the franchise, it just recognized a system that was already doing the job for them. The ethics conversation didn't start with this sale, it just got louder, and maybe That's the only good thing about Simsgate, is that people finally realized how much of their own money was funding their misery. At this point, Simsgate isn't just about one franchise. It's a time capsule of how the internet handles moral crises in 2025, a mix of outrage, memes, and burnout. We build cozy online worlds, corporations monetize them, something ethically horrifying happens, and then suddenly everyone is forced to decide if the fun can still be enjoyed. Underneath the headlines, this is about how exhausted we all are from being conscious consumers in a system that punishes consciousness. You're either apathetic and complicit or awake and exhausted, and Simsgate just made that tension visible. It reminded people that trying to live ethically inside of late-stage capitalism feels like playing The Sims with all of the chaos lot traits turned on and no pause button. We can't fix billion-dollar systems with individual boycotts, but we can decide which spaces deserve our energy and who gets access to our creativity, our labor, and our time. That's the quiet revolution happening here. People realizing that we don't owe loyalty to the things that drain them. If you've made it this far, I have a feeling that you don't just watch videos, you reflect, and that's exactly what my newsletter, You Needed This, is for. It's like this channel, but quieter, no algorithms, no hot takes, just a weekly moment to breathe, think, and remember who you are outside of the noise. Each week I send out a short essay, something to ground you and to help you slow down and remind you that you're not crazy for wanting gentler ways to live and create. So if you could use a pause button in your inbox, the link is down below. It's free, it's thoughtful, and I would love to see you there. And hey, if you like the video, then could you please tap the like button? Not because the algorithm requires like a blood sacrifice, though it feels like it does, but it just tells YouTube that people like you enjoy my videos. And you seem cool, so would you hit the button? Subscribe if you want more cultural overthinking, and hit the bell if you enjoy being mildly inconvenienced by enlightenment. With all of that out of the way, allow me to thank you for taking the time to overthink with me today. Hey, why don't you go treat yourself to a little nap? You deserve it.